Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fiction genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Killjoys. A very, very good episode of Killjoys, which kind of took a very sour turn for the team. It's all about, we're going to clean up the rack and everything, so everyone kind of gets locked and loaded. We don't know how many people actually got out of that whole situation, because we obviously only focused on Dutch and her team Awesome, but we've never really saw any of the other teams. It seems like some of them might died. I don't know. We really never got much of a look at the other people involved in this whole situation. It just sucked. So they went in with a game plan, like, we're going to clear out the rack, but it turns out the Holland were expecting them, so they were able to fight the paralytics, and they lost some people. They lost Benji right from the very beginning. I was hoping Dutch would be able to get to him in time, but sadly not. Turns out McAvoy, the same actor who plays Alex on Continuum, also Vic on The Mist. That's why I was kind of halfway expecting him to stick around, because I was like, oh well, he's off The Mist right now. So I was like, but then it's like, so he's going to probably be like full time in this. It's like, oh no, so maybe this means he's going to pop up in The Mist. I don't know, just one of those outside things that kind of telling you how a storytelling might go. It's not important, but yeah, it turns out he was a traitor. I should have known, because the entire time they were torturing, like trying to torture Davin and, well, mainly torturing Johnny, but we're trying to get information out of them. McAvoy was not in the room at whatsoever, so I kind of figured, I was like, okay, we're going to find out he is a traitor. It turns out he is, because he wanted, the whole Holland situation to happen to him. So I was wondering, because immediately my brain, when it was like, okay, there's got to be a traitor amongst us, I was thinking it was either going to be one of those three, people who were brought in just to clear things up. It's like they're from three other rack central units, and they were kind of the top people at those particular racks being brought in this whole situation. I was like, either the main dude that was very vocal the entire episode, either he was going to be Holland or all of them were, and they just faked it. I wasn't sure, but turns out none of them were the case. That was the case. But it was also a sad episode, because it turns out that Banyan, actually not a bad lady. Yes, she's kind of a hard ass and everything, but she would legitimately came with the best intention. It's not like she was Holland anything. I never really thought she was Holland. I always figured she was just a hard ass that eventually she joined forces with her, which they kind of came to an understanding, but it wasn't until after Dutch stabbed her. It's like, oh wait, you're human. It's like, I thought you were Holland, which apparently she kind of knows what they are, because she's come across this before, but she asked higher up in Iraq, but they wouldn't answer her. So she came here because she saw the whole missing rack agent, so she thought she could get answers, and Dutch being in the center of it, she figured she could get some answers. And sadly, it's basically kind of a repeat the whole Turin situation of they should have been on the same side the entire time. I was hoping they'd get to Banyan beforehand, but before she died, but sadly she dies at the end of the episode. I was like, dude, that sucks. That one less ally in this whole situation, especially if they did have her backing, she could probably have, I've thrown it out there, that joint forces with her, she could get to other people. But the main reason, I kind of figure the main reason why they didn't tell her is because, well, yes, they couldn't trust her, but more so than anything, they couldn't trust anyone that she possibly would talk to. Who's to say that the people, even if she isn't Holland, that maybe the people, what she isn't, but who she ended up talking to wouldn't be Holland too. It's a whole thing. Once again, it's a whole conspiracy. The fact is, Holland looked just like anyone else with the whole human host thing, so makes it very hard to tell who you can trust and who you can't until time's up. Johnny went through that whole torturing thing where they were kind of messing with his head, kind of messing with his memories. We see a little bit of lasting effects, because he can't even say he can't remember the first person he ever had sex with, which Davin kind of had to remind him later on. And at the same time, he's having a conversation with Dutch, just oh yeah, I don't know, because we have 50% the same DNA as those yellow things that have peels. Couldn't think of the word banana until later on. But the fact is, he gave that answer does beg the question of, does his memory eventually kind of snap back into place, or is his memory completely fucked from now on? I'm curious to see what they decide to do with that going forward. I feel it seemed like the fact that he came up with the word banana makes me think that he's okay, that eventually his memory will kind of snap back in place. But nevertheless, this is also an interesting episode, because we ended up running into that genetic weapon again that we haven't seen since season 1, wasn't it? It popped up originally in season 1. When it's still, I think it was still season 1 when Delcia ended up using it, because they kind of used that as reference at the beginning of the episode too. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, that was kind of the worry, because Holland and humans are so much alike, because Holland's got a little bit of their DNA mixed in, but that's still a human being that they're inhabiting. So it's a good chance it could have killed everyone, not just the Holland. But luckily, it just killed the Holland, which gives them a very good arsenal going forward. I mean, granted, you could always argue, I guess that was always dumb luck. But this gives them a much better chance of fighting the Holland. Granted, there's like a shit ton of them, so unless you get them all within a certain radius, that weapon, I mean, not unless they learn, not unless Zephyr and Johnny work together in finding a way to amplify it. I mean, we still didn't even find out this episode what it is that Zephyr found inside of the thing Klein, the remnant that Klein had left. So we don't know what exactly was inside of that and what warranted all that safety and safekeeping and stuff. Well, consider it probably has to be a weapon against the Holland. In what shape or form, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. It is kind of interesting that they don't really 100% know. Well, because they're still under the impression that it was Dutch that killed Klein, because they're asking all these questions of like how they got rid of the Ark and Holland. So it's like, I mean, granted, the only person who would know the truth is Dutch. I mean, as well as the rest of the team. But because Anila's like going after Dutch hard because it's like, nah. Like, gonna make her suffer because she's the woman that murdered my father. No matter the circumstances, even if she's like, your dad sacrificed herself for us, it still wouldn't change the fact is it like, oh, he died because of you and everything. Because it seems like Anila does hold a heavy grudge against Dutch. Because let's not forget, like, Dutch warranted a lot of his attention. Because, I'm sure every time Klein looked at her, he saw his little girl again, his little girl Anila, but she wasn't, Anila changed a lot because of the Holland and everything. But kind of showing you on the scale of just how vindictive and evil she is, she made sure to wipe out all the other rack places except for the one that, Turin and Dutch worked out. The one place they cleared out when it was all said and done, it's like, okay, the other top people are like, yo, we're working together again. Let me make clear my house. Rather than giving her the chance to kind of clear up and build an army of her own, she blows them all up and leaves only the one, because it's like, I want you to have that one place so that when it's all said and done, I can come after her and leave her. Like, I want her to be alone like I have been for such a long time, because she didn't have her dad because Klein was so caught up with her and everything. So she really, 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 really hates Dutch. And also, I mean, this also showed you just how scary Anila can be, because it's like you think Anila is just a temperamental lady, just very childlike. You basically see the psychopath, but she seems like a child with a tantrum. But now you see her as just the villain that she is. Like, oh, you think everything I do is dumb? You think the real reason why I came out here, Delcia, was to really help you out here? It's like, no, I had plans of my own, because it seems Delcia was going after the Jacoby brothers. Specifically, she was going after because Anila was like, you went after the wrong brother. So I'm guessing that was more of a comment about when Delcia originally put the warrant out for Johnny, because the fact is she didn't realize how special Davin was. Meeting Davin last episode set things in motion and made her very interested in Davin. Davin is what she's in the J system specifically for. Delcia wanted Johnny obviously for revenge, but she wants Davin because she finds him interesting. Because we also see that, and it's something that one of the guys, one of the Holland kind of brought up this episode, because Davin kind of showed his powers and ended up exploding one of the Holland's heads. And he's like, I've not seen that since. The only person I've ever seen to be able to do that is Anila, which we saw earlier in the episode. Her second in command, who has reservations about the whole Delcia situation, he was kind of talking back, and she kind of, using her mind, kind of did a similar thing to Davin. So I think that's why she's taking even more of an interest in Davin, because she's like, where is my daddy? What has my daddy done to you? Because it's like they're exactly the same as to what they can do. They can control the Holland, and we've yet to see another Holland that can do what Anila does. So once again, showing you she's a breed on her own, which is wondering like what. Because that still begs the question of how is she still Holland after everything? Which, granted, she's still, like, as we saw at the end of season 2, she was drinking more Holland. So maybe it's a situation of, like, the Holland inside of her mutated. The moment, because she got her mutation, her Holland came from Arkin, so her should have disappeared. So either she replenished it, it's kind of been my thought, or maybe it never 100% died in her, because that was something that kind of got brought up this episode too, like, with Fancy, his loyalty being questioned, because the others are like, oh, whoa, he was a former Holland, you're trusting him to interrogate this lady, but she's getting all in his head and everything. It's like, oh, these are your people? I mean, they don't 100% trust you because you were once a Holland. Sure, it wasn't by choice, but you were still one of us, and you think you're cured now. Eventually, you'll get that hunger, that burning feeling, and you'll come begging for us to take you back. And the moment that was sad, combined with the fact that Turin never really trusted him again throughout the episode, not letting him out because he's letting the other dude get to him. The point of the matter is, it doesn't matter what that dude is saying. What you should have done is believed in Fancy, because Fancy has not shown you any itty bitty form of disloyalty. But now, like, if he did, I mean, it would suck, but you couldn't blame him because he feels like, I mean, we really don't even know how the rest of the group feels towards him. I feel like they're okay with him, but Turin's like treating him like that was kind of the last straw. It's like, there's only supposed to be one asshole on this team in this corner. Like, you can keep it all to yourself, because it's like, you're supposed to have my back. I've been there. I've been loyal to you through this whole situation. And you do this to me. I've stuck through you as a part of this war and everything. But when the time came, you didn't have my back. It doesn't matter what anyone else is saying. You should have trusted me, and you couldn't even do that. So it's like, oh, I was under the pressure, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, this is a type of situation where you do not piss off easily one of the best killjoys that you have on your team. You need everyone you can get for this war. I'm very curious to see what Fancy does going forward. Will he be all for it? Will he be like, will there be the concern of like whether or not he'll go back to being a Holland, because it's like, well, no, I have no place amongst humans. No one really trusts me. No one will ever really 100% trust me, I mean, Davin kind of understands where you're coming from. It's not like, I mean, Davin's going through that same exact issue with the whole like being messed with in his head, and then he, stabbing his brother, trying to kill Dutch, and that wasn't the easiest thing to come back from. But look where the team is now. So, but once again, that's just Turin. We don't know how the rest of the group deals. We've never really had much. I mean, we've seen them work with Fancy, but we haven't really seen them like where they really 100% stand, dude. I mean, I would assume that they trust Fancy wholeheartedly no matter what, because it's like, yo, Fancy, yeah, you're an asshole, but you're our asshole, so, well, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. I mean, the question is, like, and the second in command dude kind of brought it up this episode too. It's like, what is it that Delsea wants? To me, it's her power plus more. She always wants more. She wants power. That is ultimately what it is. So I'm thinking she's coming back to the J system and everything, specifically for the fact is that she can reclaim her power as a ninth, as well as get much more. I don't think it's going to be about making the other 9 into Holland like her. I mean, that might ultimately be the plan, but it might be a situation where she like wipes out the other 9, make it so that she's the only one left, so that she can have power. She wants to rule by Anila's side, because it's like, because Anila has real power, it's like, which I guess Delsea finds it very attractive, because her and Anila start making out. Because there was always kind of a thing between her and Dutch, so it's like, I wouldn't want Anila to know about you and Dutch have kissed before, because if you had, I mean, granted, she was trying to save her life and everything, but still, I'm sure Anila seems like the jealous type, because she's not the most rational person. Once again, there's a super villain side of her that's very rational and calculating, but there's also that other side of her that loses her temper immediately, as we saw when she found out about what happened to her dad. So this was just kind of an incredible episode of setting up. The fact of the matter is, this puts Dutch and the others in a very, very tough spot, because it's like now a lot of their potential army wiped out. They're the only ones, at least amongst the outposts. I mean, at least those that were within the rack. I mean, that are within the J system. There might be some that are still on the outskirts, but at least the closest ones that they were going to rely on and everything have been wiped out. Which, I mean, kind of adds more to the whole supervillain aspect to Anila, because it's like, yeah, because she didn't want to take the chance that they might be taken out anyway. So it's like, why not go ahead and take out the useless Holland? Because as we know, as she said, there are some that were meant to lead and others to follow. The ones that are followed, they could easily, meant to follow, they can easily be wiped out and replaced eventually. So it's like, the numbers don't matter to her, because it's all a calculated move. Because it's like, not only is she wiping out some of her people, which her people can be replaced all the time with Holland, but she's also wiping out a large percentage of Dutch's army too. Yes, she still has the Farron, but this still would have been a big help to be armed with other trained people. But it's definitely going to be very interesting going forward. Like I said, they do have that genetic weapon, but even then, that's still kind of like, unless it can increase the range and stuff like that, we'll just kind of have to wait and see how this all goes down. And especially now that Anila has taken an interest in Davin. She didn't necessarily, I mean, we don't know if those Holland who had captured Davin for that little bit actually got a message out to her or not. But even if not, she's already taken an interest in Davin because of how they met. She's like, oh, look what you did. Like, I mean, we might also even find out that maybe she's actually able to do that. Like, Klein already it's mainly because Klein and Davin connected like that, but who's to say that Neela won't be able to tap into that connection to start messing with Davin's head and visiting him and stuff like that? It seems like that's totally possible. I mean, we still don't even know fully what Neela is capable of, but it seems like amongst the Holland, she is the strongest one of them all. Hence why she's like the commander and everything. So, like I said, a very good episode, and I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.